Sonic the Hedgehog, in the many words I've said before, revolving around this topic that always seems to come up each April on CRT Dreams, is something that is important to me and many other people too. The games, the characters, everything about the blue blur and the games that surround him. It entertains me and many others, but there's an aspect of Sonic the Hedgehog that also appeals to people, and to me. History. This series is a literal goldmine of interesting, bizarre and odd history and factoids. Whether it be hidden development details or unreleased games, it attracts people to it like a moth to light, and Sonic Xtreme is one such piece of history that's remained in the mind of people for over 20 plus years now. If you've been a long-time viewer of CRT Dreams, you'll be familiar with Xtreme to a certain extent, and the little things when it comes to its history. But for those out the loop, Sonic Xtreme was supposed to be the true first 3D Sonic game released for the Sega Saturn in the late 90s. Due to a number of problems that ruined aspects of development and only further increased the stress on the developers making it, the game was cancelled, and it fell into the cracks of time pretty much. Over the next few decades, fans would pick up the pieces of the project, contacting old developers, and seemed to resurrect in as much as they could of what was once such a promising game project that could have changed history potentially. 3 years ago, on the very first episode of CRT Dreams, I looked into Sonic Xtreme's Unknown Song, a song that became known as its unofficial level editor theme. But in spite of figuring out the little mystery behind that and looking deeper into other aspects of the history of this game, like the auctions and the leaked assets that got into public domain, public hands pretty much, there was always something about that very first episode that kind of stood out to me, something which has been there since the very beginning, but always interested me low-key: the art. Who made that art? Are they still around? Did they do more? And why did it end up gaining another use beyond being just art? How did it become an unintentional symbol of a video game that never got a full release? How did it end up here? Today on CRT Dreams, for the 3rd anniversary of the show and of that very first episode, let's get back to the root of it all and look into the art behind that video and have a little bit of an interesting commentary about it. Without further ado, let's go! There's always something else about this game that seems to just get very, very interesting quick. It's either the music or auction histories or assets being leaked out, whatever. In a way, this game is quite the box of secrets. The kind of thing that if you keep looking into, you'll find something very, very interesting for sure. In this case, it's the art. The art always interested me. For such a very old-sounding, mellow song, it kind of fits the imagery in a way, doesn't it? Something old-timey, something a little warped in the sound itself, something that seems to be very elegant but natural. Fits with the whole visual of Sonic sitting under greenery while it rains pretty well, in my opinion. That's a very scuffed way for me to describe it, I will fully admit that, but what I'm really getting at here is that the visuals and the song itself seem to fit quite well, and it's probably what was in Darkside's mind when he uploaded that unofficial level editor theme to begin with, alongside, the obvious visuals. What interests me, however, about this is that it's either a re-upload of the art somewhere or some sort of weird image compression, because the image in the actual video does not seem to resemble the fully sourced one in the description. Note the higher contrast, for example, there's a definite difference, although maybe I am looking a bit too into it. But with all that in mind, and with this image becoming the face, even in a smaller way, of Sonic Xtreme for at least the late 2010s, who made this? Who made this image that's kind of become somewhat iconic to me and a few other people? Let's have a comfy, chill dive into the details surrounding that. Finding the source is quite easy, something of which is, wow, quite amazingly relaxed compared to the previous episodes each April, where I had to dig through forum posts after forum posts and look into a defunct assembler games just to find the details. Side note aside, yeah, quite easy compared to the previous few examples. Looking into the description, the source image is given, and with that we can determine some details. Looking at the details when hovering over the link in the description, we can get a bit of a lead on who made this image, Saku666. A quick search does reveal quite a lot. Multiple links, a lot of fan art, and a direct link to their account. So I looked through their DeviantArt profile, then to the gallery in said profile, where I was curious to see if there were any other pieces like this, because this piece is one of the pieces of fan art that they've created. I don't usually mention a lot of fan stuff like this. I don't really go into detail because I don't want to go too sidetracked sometimes. But wow, everything on here is just beautiful. So much detail. The shading is just so beautifully soft and crisp. It's gorgeous stuff, unironically. Like, this stuff is really, really beautiful. Just goes to show the power of the Sonic fandom if they can turn something as simple as a funny little blue hedgehog into beautiful fan arts. Like, wow. And with that in mind, it makes it not too surprising that this artist's work would end up being used for a thumbnail for something Sonic related. I'll talk more on that later though. Concerning the artists themselves, they're definitely more than just the image used in Xtreme. Apparently from the People's Republic of China and going by she, her pronouns, they seem to have been an active part of the Sonic fandom. No, scene. Taking a look at their work on their still active DeviantArt account, they seem to be pretty into the Sonic fandom at the time, with a lot of Sonic X shadow pieces dotted around throughout their work. Beyond that, a lot of different aspects are spread throughout their account, shipping stuff, games like Sonic and the Black Knight, original works, and even the older Sonic games too, plus a lot of works which admittedly are a bit more suggestive or a bit darker in tone. I find their account personally interesting because in terms of it, it seems to have been active from a quite large time frame. Their last posted work on their DeviantArt account was July 30th, 2014, nearly a decade ago. Looking back further, their first post here was posted on October 7th, 2007. Their net history doesn't entirely seem to stop here though, as they seem to use a Tumblr account at one point. Link is on the video itself, being shown now. What stood out to me is that they seem to use this Tumblr account a while after their DeviantArt one became kind of frozen in time, seemingly forgotten or abandoned. With the latest activity of them having been said Tumblr account, it seems that their activity ceased after this point. I did try and find references to them still being active. I even did find a few from a few Twitter users, but I haven't been able to find their current account, and any accounts that I have managed to find don't seem to align with their interests, so I can't say for sure if this is Saku666 or not. That being said, where do we go from here with knowing who created this piece of fan art, and why has it been roped into Xtreme's legacy? Keeping all of this in mind, why does such a particular fan artist, why does Saku666 matter in all of this, in Xtreme's post-death history? Well, aside from the fact that as an artist they, in my opinion, deserve as much love as possible for the works that they create, and I wanted to show that, It serves to be a very real example of something that I find to be particularly common and interesting in the Sonic fandom, in that the fanworks community and the preservation community are so in tune with each other that in a sense they complement the other. It puts my mind immediately as to how there's fan art of Xtreme, how both the artistic communities out there that create and create and create over and over and over, and the preservation communities who are so hyper-focused on keeping the older legacy of this series alive, probably more so than Sega at this point. The fact that they align so near perfectly in situations like this is kind of surreal to me, and I don't really see any other communities do that much. One of the unique aspects of this fandom, this community, honestly, from what I've seen personally and from this example, this isn't to say that Saku 666's art is supposed to be based on Xtreme or something. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at, however, is that there's an overlap within the two sides of this fandom. And it's curious to me how one fan artist's work became an unintentional symbol of a game that never had a proper release. It's another weird little side note in Xtreme's legacy, because no matter what, there's always going to be something that pulls Xtreme out of the ground and gets people to take another look. It's always such a curious habit when it comes to this game and this fandom that I just keep noticing more and more. Whatever the case, Saku 666's fan art even, ended up becoming an unintentional symbol of this game that really just never got a release. And a damn powerful one at that. The remaining question that lingers within my mind is, why this particular image? Why this one? There's tons of other beautiful fan works out there, and Saku's gallery is full of stuff that you could probably tie to Xtreme somehow, you know? This is going into more speculative discussion now, and yeah, take it with a grain of salt, and this is more or less my personal opinion at this point, but I can sort of explain why this piece of fan art fits with Xtreme so well. The thing about Xtreme is that it's pretty much lost to time, for the most part. Its pieces are scattered, even if they exist to begin with at this point. It's been years. In a sense, Sonic Xtreme has returned to zero, returned to the very nature it came from. That's interesting to me when it comes to the music, Life by Y0C1E, and then combine that with the visuals, it feels very hidden, very lost in a sense, fitting with the image of Sonic underneath nature, rainy nature, very secluded, like Xtreme, kind of like the nature of the song until Darkseid had to find out whatever the hell it was supposed to be. So in a weird way, Sonic underneath the nature as it rains as an art piece combined with the song's feel, and then Xtreme's nature feels oddly fitting, at least in my opinion. For elements that seemingly don't share a concrete link, it's always surprising to me that Xtreme can sort of pull other things within its own orbit and connect them somehow. I feel like Xtreme has something most other pieces of lost media just don't have, in that it always seems to become relevant again one way or the other, and while new pieces of media may be considered obscure in their own right, have their own kind of orbits, they are just not as powerful, in my opinion, as Sonic Xtreme. The only other piece of media that I can think is sort of along the lines of that orbit would kind of be Sapari Community Place, which I covered in a different video and I obviously intend to cover again at some point. Curious how they're both so powerful at roping in elements that aren't related but become related as soon as they get touched by the main media. On a different note, I hope that wherever they are, whatever they're doing, I hope genuinely that Saku 666 is doing alright and that their art is helping them thrive even more. Because I think, personally, that if your art becomes an unintentional symbol of something like Xtreme, I think you have succeeded even more so as an artist if your work can become the representation of something which refuses to die and which refuses to really fade into obscurity. I think there's a kind of beauty when it comes to that. It's funny how, after all this time, pretty much every aspect of that first video that I ever did for CRT Dreams and on Xtreme has somewhat come back to haunt me in the best way possible, and, well, just generally come back over the years, every April, just to kind of show itself. Be it the music, the history, now the image, or something else, it's odd. I've never really come across anything quite like it. But even with all of these covered, there are fragments of Xtreme that I have never spoken about, that I'm sure that I will cross paths with on my own at some point, and with this show in due time. There's always some way in which Xtreme comes back, but one thing consistently does remain constant about all this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again: some things can be found. You just have to know where to look.